Well, hi there. So this is a video I've been thinking about doing for quite a while, and it's about safety in Mexico and in travel in general, and just safety in general. How do we think about that? So I've been getting questions about it ever since I started traveling in Mexico many years ago, about 6 or 7 years ago now. And first of all, you can't say that Mexico is safer than the US or the US is safer than Mexico, because they're both big, crazy countries with their own influences that impact crime, right? And I'll talk about that in just a second. But the first thing that I had to do when my kids were little and we were traveling, I obviously was concerned with keeping them safe. And what I had to realize was that I didn't have full control over that, and that there is no, quote, safe place. So if I was running around looking for someplace safe to take my kids, then what that would mean would I would be accepting blind spots, and that actually would put them in more danger than if I was just honest about the situation, said, okay, we're going to take a risk, we're going to take a trip, and there is no safe place, and in fact, sitting in our house doesn't mean we're safe either. So basically, safety is an illusion that our fear-based brain wants us to chase our whole lives. So, but what can we do? So what I've done is I think, okay, I do have a sphere of influence though over the probability that something bad might happen, right? And so depending upon where I am and situationally, that changes. So if I'm sitting in a gated community in the United States, the odds of something happening are probably lower than if I'm, in the middle of a marketplace in Mexico. But at the same time, I could go to the Walmart and there could be a shooter. So again, you can't say that one country is safer than the other. So let's talk about types of crime. The two kinds of crime, when people are asking me about is Mexico safe, what I think they're getting at is there are two types. There's opportunistic crime, which is basically getting your phone stolen, getting pickpocketed. Getting mugged here is not that common. So the opportunistic crime is probably in the tourist areas, especially higher here than violent crime. So violent crime is what it sounds like. Guns are involved, maybe, physical harm is involved, and that is not as common in Mexico for people in my position in the places that I go. What I have to watch out more for is, where's my phone? Where's my purse? Is the door locked? That kind of thing. So Mexico, yes, has cartels, and obviously that influences the rate of violence in the country. I can directly influence the probability of being involved in something like that based on where I spend my time and what I'm doing. So I don't go to the border towns of Texas. That is not a place for US citizens at this moment in history. No, it's just not. Mexico City is very serious about protecting their perimeter. Now, these are my impressions based on my experience. The National Army is there. The city has its own security. Then there's police force, and they are very serious about protecting their perimeter in Mexico City. Even in the surrounding towns and larger cities in Mexico, among the Mexicans, the conventional wisdom is don't mess with the cartels, and your chances of being a victim are lower. So if you ask your Uber driver, where can I buy drugs? And I know Uber drivers, and that happens. Then you're inviting something into your life that you have control over not having there. Also, you have the chances that you're endangering your Uber driver if they agree to take you somewhere. So it should seem obvious, but don't come to Mexico and ask about drugs. Don't come here and go to bad areas, period. Or especially if you're going to, then you need to go with a group of Mexican people. And that would be the same as in New York City. I mean, I think about it like New York. I wouldn't go to the deepest, darkest neighborhoods all by myself at nighttime. It just, common sense. So that gets us back to the US and back to why I do spend a lot of time in Mexico and I don't feel unsafe. And that's because when I have spent time in the United States, I lived in New York City for about 4 months, and I've lived in the Bay Area, Northern California for a few years, Los Angeles, Houston. I love big cities. And I refuse to stop hanging out in big cities. And the thing that the United States struggles with is mental illness of people who are living on the street. And in my lifetime, I have watched that situation get easily twice as bad, if not 4x. So, for example, when I was in New York City, I was staying in a nice Airbnb near Central Park on the northeast corner, kind of southern Harlem, but not like central Harlem, but the gentrifying area of Harlem. And at nighttime, every single night, there was at least one homeless person literally screaming on the street at different times. And it was Dickinsonian. It was like Charles Dickens, it was like a scene out of a mental asylum from those days, only it was on the street. My daughter lives in New York City, and she and all of her friends have all had incidents in the subway tunnels, on the subway, that have made them uncomfortable enough to where they really try to take Ubers when they can. And it's because people that don't have anywhere else to stay and have mental issues and perhaps substance abuse issues, those things often go together, they use the subway areas as shelters because the shelters themselves are overcrowded and not safe. And this is a deliberate result of some policies in the United States around healthcare, around what we choose to tolerate, lots of things I won't get into, but that is not the case in Mexico. So as far as random violence goes, I actually feel like the odds of something happening to me from someone who isn't quite right up here but living on the street are much, much lower here. And in fact, when I was in Houston, I was confronted during the lockdown area. I was on a bike. No, I was walking at that time, and I was staying in an Airbnb near downtown. And the homeless people, their usual routine was messed up because the food pantries were closed. And anyway, I don't want to get into a long, big thing, but I had not an altercation, but I had a man yell at me, a homeless man, because I didn't engage with him in the way he thought I should. And that has never happened to me in Mexico. And you just don't see homeless people on the streets to the same degree, because here there is the expectation and the reality that families do take care of each other. And in fact, the government can insist that a family take in a family member who's become an issue. And then if it becomes apparent that that person is too far gone to live with the family, then there are facilities here. But I also think that the domestic unit in Mexico is stronger, and the social fabric here is stronger, and so that contributes to a lower level of mental illness. But the biggest thing is they haven't engaged in overseas wars where they have, homeless veterans coming back that end up on the street as well. And I do have some street cred around that conversation because I volunteered with a homeless organization in Austin when I was there, and I learned a lot about the high percentage of hardcore homeless that are from the military. So again, something the US could take more steps around, and for whatever reason we choose not to. So so that is, kind of to sum it up, the way to stay safe as you can in Mexico is to manage the probability that something might happen, and the way that you do that is you dress down, and you don't wear nice flashy jewelry. I mean, it's all the basics that sometimes I feel like, I shouldn't, like, people know this, don't they? But maybe if you just started traveling, it's okay. Just dress down. I know I mean, I get sick of wearing the same old thing sometimes when I'm going out and about, but unless I'm going to a restaurant in an Uber, you know, and it's kind of an occasion, I just don't dress up here. And I also, as someone who's living here now, I don't have a bank account here in Mexico. I may end up doing that at some point, but it hasn't been necessary. I don't carry lots of cash, and I don't keep things laying around in my Airbnb or my apartment. I don't go out, you know, late at night by myself. I don't go drinking by myself. Just, again, the basics, right? That's my take on safety in Mexico. Again, it's comparing apples and oranges because, you know, the United States with our gun control or lack thereof, the randomness of the violence, I feel like it means there's less that I can influence the probability of. Between that and the mental illness, that's the challenge in the U.S. In Mexico, the challenge is decreasing the probability of a opportunistic crime, like somebody coming in and grabbing your phone or, you know, breaking into your car. Although the only time I've ever had a car broken into was in San Francisco. So, yeah, I mean, if you're a person who wants to go and see the world and gets down to personal risk, personal tolerance for risk, right? I just don't want to live in a place where most people look like me and that is walled off from the world, because to me that's not reality anyway. I mean, that is a way to decrease the probability of something happening. But I have a higher risk tolerance in general, and my lifestyle reflects that. So I appreciate it when people express concern, but just know that I'm very smart about what I'm doing, and I 90% of it is attitude, and I learned a lot from living in Mexico City about how I carry myself. You can't live your life in fear. You have to calmly assess the variables and impact the probabilities as much as you can. I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, let me know. Bye.